Blackwood Forest, an expanse of twisted trees and underbrush, had long been the subject of local folklore. Nestled at the edge of the small town of Ravenbrook, it was said to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who had vanished there decades ago. Legend had it that her wails could be heard on moonless nights, echoing through the trees, chilling the hearts of anyone who dared to listen. For years, the story was dismissed as a mere tale to scare children. That was until a group of campers went missing one autumn evening. Their tents were found torn and empty, their belongings scattered, but not a single trace of the campers themselves. This incident rekindled the old fears, and the forest was once again shrouded in an aura of dread. On a crisp October day, a group of 5 friends decided to test the legend for themselves. Sarah, a budding journalist, was eager to uncover the truth behind the disappearances. Her best friend, Lisa, a skeptic, wanted to debunk the myths. Jake, the adventurous one, and his girlfriend, Emma, who enjoyed a good scare, joined them. Lastly, there was Tom, the quiet observer, who had a knack for capturing eerie moments with his camera. They gathered at Sarah's house, packing their gear and discussing the plan. "We'll head out in the afternoon, set up camp near the old ruins, and stay the night," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Lisa asked, her voice tinged with doubt. "What if the stories are true?" "Come on, Lisa, you don't really believe in ghosts, do you?" Jake scoffed. "I don't know," Lisa replied, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "I just have a bad feeling about this." Tom, as usual, remained silent, his camera slung over his shoulder. He glanced at Lisa and gave a reassuring nod, but even he felt a strange sense of foreboding. The drive to Blackwood Forest was filled with nervous laughter and anticipation. The sun was beginning to set as they parked at the entrance, the forest looming ahead like a dark sentinel. They hiked along a narrow path, the dense foliage gradually swallowing the light until only faint beams filtered through the canopy. As they reached the old ruins, an eerie silence fell over them. The crumbling stones and moss-covered walls gave the place an otherworldly feel. They set up their tents in a small clearing and built a campfire to ward off the growing chill. As night descended, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The friends sat around the fire, telling ghost stories and laughing nervously. But as the hours passed, their laughter faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. "Do you hear that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide. A faint, mournful wail drifted through the trees, sending shivers down their spines. "It's just the wind," Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Or maybe it's the ghost," Sarah suggested, her tone playful but her expression serious. Lisa hugged her knees, her eyes scanning the darkness. "I don't like this," she muttered. Tom raised his camera, the lens focused on the surrounding trees. "Let's document everything," he said quietly. "Just in case." As midnight approached, the wailing grew louder, more distinct. It was no longer a distant sound carried by the wind, it was close, almost palpable. The friends huddled together, their fear mounting. Suddenly, the fire flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Sarah fumbled for her flashlight, her hands trembling. When she finally managed to turn it on, the beam revealed a figure standing at the edge of the clearing. It was a woman, her face pale and ghostly, her eyes hollow. She wore a tattered dress, and her long hair flowed like a dark waterfall. She opened her mouth, and a chilling wail filled the air. "Run!" Jake shouted, grabbing Emma's hand. They scrambled to their feet, running blindly into the forest. The wail followed them, echoing through the trees, growing louder and more desperate. Sarah stumbled and fell, her flashlight rolling away. She reached for it, but a cold hand grasped her wrist. She looked up to see the ghostly woman standing over her, her eyes filled with sorrow and rage. "Help me," the woman whispered, her voice a haunting melody. Sarah screamed, her vision blurring as darkness closed in around her. When Sarah woke, she was alone. The forest was eerily quiet, the wailing gone. She stood up, her body aching, and called out for her friends. There was no response. Panicking, she searched the area, but there was no sign of them. Their tents were still there, their belongings untouched, but her friends had vanished. Desperate, she ran back to the car, hoping to find them there. But the car was empty, the doors locked. She tried to start it, but the engine refused to turn over. As dawn broke, Sarah sat on the hood of the car, her mind racing. What had happened to her friends? Had the ghost taken them? And if so, why had she been spared? Sarah returned to Ravenbrook, her story met with skepticism and fear. The townspeople whispered about the curse of Blackwood Forest, and the police launched a search for the missing friends. But days turned into weeks, and there was no trace of them. Determined to find answers, Sarah delved into the history of the forest. She discovered that the woman who haunted it was named Eliza, a young bride who had disappeared on her wedding night. According to the legend, her husband had been a cruel man, and she had fled into the forest to escape him. But she had never returned, and her spirit was said to roam the woods, seeking revenge on anyone who ventured too close. Sarah contacted a local historian, Mr. Grayson, who had studied the legend for years. "There's more to the story," he said, his voice grave. Eliza's husband was involved in dark rituals. It's said that he summoned something evil, something that took Eliza and bound her spirit to the forest. "Is there any way to free her?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "There might be," Mr. Grayson replied. "But it's dangerous. You'd have to perform a ritual to break the curse, and it must be done in the heart of the forest, at midnight." Sarah knew it was a risk, but she couldn't leave her friends to their fate. With Mr. Grayson's guidance, she gathered the necessary items for the ritual: a silver dagger, a vial of holy water, and a piece of Eliza's wedding dress, which Mr. Grayson had found in an old chest. As night fell, she returned to Blackwood Forest, her heart pounding with fear and determination. She retraced her steps to the ruins, the wailing growing louder as she approached. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the trees seemed to close in around her. At the stroke of midnight, she began the ritual, chanting the ancient words Mr. Grayson had taught her. The wind howled, and the ground trembled beneath her feet. She felt a presence behind her and turned to see Eliza's ghost, her eyes filled with pain. "Help me," Eliza whispered, her voice echoing in the darkness. Sarah took a deep breath and plunged the silver dagger into the ground, pouring the holy water over it. The air crackled with energy, and Eliza's form began to shimmer. "Release her spirit," Sarah cried, her voice strong and clear. "Break the curse." There was a blinding flash of light, and Eliza's wail filled the air one last time. When the light faded, the forest was silent. Eliza was gone, her spirit finally at peace. Sarah stumbled back to the clearing, her heart heavy with grief. She feared that her friends were lost forever. But as she approached the camp, she heard voices, familiar voices. "Sarah!" Jake called, rushing to her side. They were all there, Jake, Emma, Lisa, and Tom. They looked confused and disoriented, but unharmed. "What happened?" Emma asked, her voice shaking. "Where did we go?" "I don't know," Sarah replied, tears streaming down her face. "But you're back. That's all that matters." They embraced, their relief palpable. As they made their way back to the car, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees, Sarah couldn't help but glance back at the forest. It seemed different now, less menacing, as if a great weight had been lifted. The events of that night changed them all. They returned to Ravenbrook, their bond stronger than ever. Sarah wrote an article about their experience, bringing attention to the legend of Blackwood Forest and the tragic story of Eliza. The forest remained a place of mystery and wonder, but the wailing was never heard again. The townspeople believed that Eliza's spirit had finally found peace, and the forest was no longer cursed. As for Sarah and her friends, they carried the memory of that night with them always, a reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead, and the power of friendship and courage in the face of the unknown. The legend of Blackwood Forest lived on, but it was no longer a tale of fear and despair. It was a story of redemption, of a spirit freed from its torment, and of the enduring strength of the human spirit.